Riddle. What's black and purple and so infuriating that it resulted in me writing 13 pages of script to do this review? Well, let's get into it. So, this is overdue. I think anyone that foolishly had faith in this item already have their pre-orders and already know what I'm about to say. This one is less review and a lot more rant. With that said, let's dig into Dreams for the Dying 2022 vinyl release from Cleopatra Records. This may be less obvious to some, so please forgive the age-defining retrospective. Believe it or not, there was a glorious age of music buying when an LP and a cassette were the same price, and it would set you back less than $10. The majesty of CDs, their smaller size, and a generous resale market drove a stake through the heart of LPs. It felt like it came on quickly. By the early 90s, it was only European and Caribbean markets keeping vinyl on life support. Major US labels had eliminated vinyl from their catalogs. Smaller labels and indie labels had little recourse but to relegate their offerings to compact disc. This is way before digital started making strides into the market. This was still an era when you were buying physical copies of the music that you wanted in your collection. Vinyl became niche and cheap on the secondhand market. Most US pressing plants closed. It only took about another decade for indie artists who utilized the handful of remaining vinyl plants to offer very limited runs of vinyl. There were also some labels, for instance, like Nine Inch Nails. They did promo copies of their albums on vinyl, and if you were lucky enough, you would stumble upon one of those in an independent record store. Other than that, most vinyl pressings, for example, I am an REM collector, and I had all of REM's LPs. But in order to get out of time on vinyl, I had to buy a German pressing because there was no US pressing. And by the time they got to the next album, small limited runs of vinyl started to become available. And that was more at the behest of the artists than it was the labels. The labels begrudgingly started pressing vinyl again until it became clearly profitable. Vinyl went from niche to novelty, and it was priced accordingly. It was no longer a $10 item. Vinyl was going to set you back at least double the cost that it used to be, more likely triple or quadruple the price that it was. And that made sense at the time. It was justifiable given that the challenges and limited resources resulted in a much more expensive product to manufacture. A decade later, after these small limited runs and these indie labels driving this market, all of a sudden we had a record store day, and it fueled a renaissance of re-releases from the very few remaining major labels that are out there. Anniversary releases, first time on vinyl, bonus material packaged with an original pressing. So the market started paying attention. Major labels were getting re-involved in the scene, and it is where it is today, where if you can even find a compact disc of an album, it's going to be about half the price of what that vinyl album is going to cost you. That $8 Rush LP in 1990 is now $30. And it's true, there's not as many plants as there were at vinyl's peak. But if Adele can order 1 million pressings of her new album, I'm not buying that it's an availability argument. It does not cost as much as labels are charging to press a vinyl copy. And, you know, God bless him, Jack White is out there trying to expand the number of pressing plants in the U.S., you know, back to a good fraction of what it used to be. Because I think vinyl is here to stay. And I can't imagine that it's going to die off again. All of these albums that people didn't pay $8 for are now paying $30 and $40 for. They're not going to just let go for no value. So that being what it is where we are today. I'm off on a tangent, I understand. And why am I telling you all of this? I think it's critical in understanding what happened in the 90s when many landmark era-defining releases never had a vinyl pressing. Now, in an era where vinyl is the dominant physical format, occasionally a first-time on vinyl pressing comes along. Maybe it's unfair to assume so, but as a fan and as a collector, your hope is that the label is going to recognize the significance and importance of offering a nearly 30-year-old album on vinyl for the first time. Or maybe you'll get a fucktastic botch job that is infuriating in almost every regard. You asked your parents for Legos, and on Christmas morning, you unwrap a box of soggy store-brand waffles. So let's talk about my thoughts and feelings on 2022's Dreams for the Dying by Shadow Project, pressed by Cleopatra Records. My feelings about Cleopatra are pretty well established. From a customer service perspective, they are among the best. Top-notch packing, quick shipping. They send you stickers, flyers, newsletters. The only more I could ask them to do, and it's something they used to do in their early days, is throw in a good promo compilation every now and then. Take a page from Project or from your early days as a label. Those things were awesome, and I actually bought other albums based on those compilations, things I heard that I liked. But let's be perfectly honest, Cleo is mostly appealing to a collector's market. They are pressing colored vinyl, marbled vinyl, splatter vinyl, and in that regard, Cleopatra should feel some embarrassment. In terms of Dreams for the Dying, I think they should feel shame. Let's start with the aesthetics. Why is this purple? Green, 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 green. These are all Shadow Project official releases. And I think maybe there's a theme. If I had to guess the theme, it's green and black. So why did we go with purple? What was the thought process there? It seems like the easiest thing you could have done in respect to the original release was be consistent with the coloring that the band established through their entire catalog. The only exception would be the Dead Babies Killer cassette single, which was more a color scheme that was coordinated with the compilation album. And then the live album, and Tuned Out, was gray. No purple. Even the original pressing of Shadow Project on vinyl from Lively Arts in France was a dark blue and black. There's no purple. So I'm going to move some things here now that I've established the green theme. I'm going to keep this out. Why? You decide to go with purple. Fine, whatever. This border here is part of the aesthetic of this album. And it was designed by members of the band. And you chose to blacken or darken out almost all of it, except this bit here that I guess you wanted us to think was grass. I'm not sure. Who made that choice? What was the point of that? Why did you add tombstones? There's no tombstones. Why is there a crow? What is this? I just don't get it. I don't know who made these decisions. Is this a joke? Was this a joke to you? Are you trying to turn what is an angry, dark, death rock masterpiece into some Hammer Film schlock to appeal what my mom thinks is goth? I am bewildered. Why? Who made these choices? And don't tell me it was to color match the vinyl. If purple was the only resin available, you fucking wait for the green. Start a GoFundMe and collect green plastic. Guess what? No one signed their name to this train wreck. Why is this a gatefold? Do you want to know what I assumed when I pre-ordered on day one like an idiot? Well, the album runs almost an hour in length. It must be 2 LPs. No, not a 2 LP. So I assume maybe that other pocket contains a poster. Cool. Oh, it's a sealed pocket. So this is a gatefold for reasons, I guess. Who the fuck knows? Does Cleo know? Can you charge more because ink paper appearances? Sure. Also interesting, Cleo takes credit for the 1992 release. Let me zoom in on that. Well, that's interesting. Fuck you, Triple X. Who even remembers you as the label that introduced Jane's Addiction to the world? Does anyone remember picture sleeves? Yeah, I do too. Fucking use them. How can a gatefold be cheaper than a fucking picture sleeve? And if it is, fuck you for cheaping out on the first time on vinyl release. Fuck. Know what also was a cool idea? Let me show you. Huh. Well, let's photocopy, literally photocopy, the liner notes from the CD booklet. Am I making that up? Let's see. No. It is a literal photocopy of the lyrics. Well, that's neat. So let's just photocopy the liner notes from the CD booklet. You know, that Triple X printed, that label that doesn't exist. And then paste those digital copies right into the inside of the gatefold. Fuck yeah. Fuck you, Legacy. And let's not forget to photocopy the album credits from that Triple X release. That'll be funny. It's infuriating. You know what else would be cool? Let's paste those lyrics into the gatefold at different resolutions and size. So it looks like Alzheimer's patients were given an activity to do. Let's go with, let's see here. Some large, some small. Yeah, good idea. Oh, we are awesome. So fuck me and fuck all of us that dreamed the impossible dream that our first pressing of this vinyl would be something that we would cherish. It's definitely memorable. Cleo did deliver on that. In all the wrong ways. Okay, so with that said, let's look at the vinyl. So it is pretty. Can't say that it's not a pretty vinyl. It's lovely. I think green and black maybe, right? Would have been a better choice. I did weigh it. It's slightly over 180 grams. I did look through the dead wax. There are no interesting etchings other than something that says Lab Mog. I assume that's where the pressings were done. Or maybe the master. Who knows? I don't know. Because it's not like it's in the liner notes. So let's talk about the media itself. And probably the most infuriating small, in quotes, detail about this, in quotes, first time on vinyl. And most of you already know this, but for those that don't, here you go. It's about 75% of the original album's first time on vinyl. And what do I mean by that? It's incomplete. What the holy fuck? You do not get Holding You Close, a song by Ava O, and you do not get The Circle and the Cross, a song by Roz Williams. A song that is arguably the crux of what Shadow Project's messaging and imagery embodies, an essential aesthetic to this particular album. You also don't get Static Jesus, that is, as it was intended and recorded for this album. Instead, you get Static Jesus from an entirely different album with a wholly different messaging. This is the From the Heart version of Static Jesus, acoustic and tonally in contrast to everything else on Dreams for the Dying. It's the opening fucking track. And why not? The whole release feels like a violation and a giant fuck you, so let's start the LP off with more of that same, since you are already pissed off from the cover. 1992, we had riots that fueled the anger and animosity that exudes from the original album. In 2021, it's an era of all-consuming chaos. So this release should also be chaos, I guess. We can look at it that way. Messaging. So I do have some praise I have to share. It's not all horrible. Mostly horrible, but the sound quality is good. Even having taken tracks from two different sources, it is paired flawlessly. Also impressive is the channel splitting is excellent. It really stands out on the spoken word elements where Roz's distinct voice flows from one speaker into the other. Hearing Lord of the Flies, Zane People, Thy Kingdom Come for the first time in vinyl feels like a plea for redemption because it has been a very, very long wait. But unfortunately for me, the sends are too great. Hearing 75% of the original release on vinyl for the first time leaves me wanting the rest, and I'm unfulfilled. Exactly what maybe Cleopatra is banking on, if you know what I mean. This is the quintessential Cleo Records fuck up. An even greater insult given that they owe, in part, their longevity to Roz Williams. I cannot in good conscience recommend this album. It will be repressed, maybe correctly. Maybe Cleo plans a vinyl box set one day. Maybe it'll be Death Box 2. Who the fuck knows? But I doubt highly, given their history, this is a one-off. What troubles me, a master had to be made, and that is a peak expense when doing an LP pressing for the first time. How likely is it for Cleo to make another and give us a full album? My gut says very unlikely, just based on historical precedents. In my opinion, this is our vinyl version of Dreams for the Dying for the foreseeable future, unless some other label throws caution to the wind and does it proper. Again, I find that highly unlikely as well. Who even owns the XXX Hollows Hill catalog? Obviously not anyone with money or anyone that gives a damn. In my opinion, this is a tragedy, not only because it's the first time this has been pressed on vinyl, but it's been a very long time coming, and it was handled so poorly. So we shouldn't be surprised. This aligns perfectly with how Cleopatra does their presentations, and it's an unfortunate aspect that as collectors and as fans of Roz Williams, we seem to be stuck with. Cleo and cult epics who sparingly release items. Cleo is our go-to. And this is how they choose to show their appreciation to fans and to the music that they're releasing. It's tragic, honestly. So what would I have done different? Obviously, it would be green and black. Duh. I probably would have reached out to Dean Carr, who I believe took the original image, the original cover image, and I would have said, hey, Dean, I doubt that everyone dressed up and went to this park or whatever it is and took one photo and that's all that exists. I bet Dean has other photos from that session. Maybe Dean had something to say about that photo session. I don't know. If Dean didn't take this photo, then he probably took all these photos inside the booklet of items used in ceremonies. Maybe he has something to say about that. You can even still faintly see them in the photocopied negative images. It's so insulting. Insulting to the people who put the original album together on all levels. From the artists to the photographers to the people that did the liner notes to the people that mastered the original album and mixed it as a cohesive piece of art, just to have it butchered, remixed, reordered, drop some tracks, bring in some other tracks. If I wasn't able financially to release a whole album, I couldn't release Dreams for the Dying as I wanted to, I probably wouldn't have done it. But if I had to, like if it was an anniversary, it was my obligation as the holder of Roz Williams's material to release an item, maybe I would have done a part 1 and part 2 and done not a gatefold, a single album. And if I wasn't able to fill a whole B-side, maybe I could have included some of the demos from this session that are out there and well known. That's my problem. Like Cleo knows this material is out there. They know who the artists, the photographers are. Many of them are still around, and it would take almost no effort. I found Dean Carr on Instagram in 5 seconds. It would take almost no effort to reach out to these people and flesh out a release that at least exhibits some effort. This is not an effort. This is somebody. This is a mixtape that your friend made you, and he put his favorite songs, or she put her favorite songs, or they put their favorite songs on that mixtape, and you never get a whole album or whatever. It's just embarrassing, and I don't know at what level of shame or embarrassment Cleopatra feels, if any. But this is probably their largest, at least in my collection, insulting, infuriating, and mismanaged release to date. I just don't have any words. They obviously had vinyl left over, probably from the Rage of Angels. And that's why they chose this color. That's my guess. Laziness. Cost cutting. Just don't do it. If it's the first time on vinyl, just don't put the effort in. Don't do it if you're not going to put the effort in, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. So that's my feelings on this, and I know I share that with a lot of people. A lot of people are even angrier than I am. I've sat with this for a long time. I'm not trying to paint Cleopatra in a bad way. It's just release after release it feels like there's little to no thought put into it, and it's frustrating as a collector. For us, mostly frustrating as a fan of Roz Williams. It is what it is. So, don't recommend this unless your need to hear 75% of the original album on vinyl outweighs the cost. I think these run around $35. I will put a link to where you can purchase it in the description if you choose to do so. It's not my recommendation. But with that said, I don't know when we are ever going to get a full copy of this album on vinyl unless someone makes it a passion project. So, with that said, thanks for joining me once again. Thanks for allowing me to rant for a change, and on to the next.